Hi guys, welcome back. Captain James T. Kirk is known as Star Trek's most prolific womanizer, yet this hides a history of love catastrophes spanning from TOS to SNW. Captain James T. Kirk of Star Trek famously never married, although he had no shortage of love partners in both his personal and professional lives. Many of Kirk's most notable relationships occurred before he took command of the USS Enterprise, but two specific ex-girlfriends would play a key role in his later life. With one or two notable exceptions, Kirk had little time for significant love relationships throughout his 5-year duty aboard the Enterprise. During Star Trek, the original series, he did, however, have a reputation as a ladies' man. That notoriety also marked Chris Pine's portrayal of Captain Kirk in the J.J. Abrams films. After a one-night fling with her Orion roommate, Kirk tries to conceal it from Cadet Nyota Uhura in one of the first sequences in Star Trek. Although fans have only seen two parallel reality versions of Captain Kirk in Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, James T. Kirk does not appear to be the same Lothario. One of these Kirks has made an indelible impression on Lan Noonien Singh, but given the Enterprise captain's lengthy romantic past, a relationship between Lan and the Prime Universe Kirk may be doomed before it even begins. Ruth, Kirk's ex-lover, emerges on the shore leave planet. Kirk and the crew took a much-needed respite on a planet in the Omicron Delta area in the Star Trek TOS episode Shore Leave. Typically, the world where everyone's wishes become a reality is too wonderful to be true for Star Trek. When Kirk beams down to the planet, he is met by Ruth, a former flame from Starfleet Academy. Although this was a mechanical replica of Kirk's former companion, the original screenplay stated that Kirk and Ruth split up at some point during his first star cruise. This conflict between Kirk's love life and his existence in space would become a recurring theme. Dr. Janice Lester Star Trek's Kirk and Janice Lester Sandra Smith is the only actress to have represented Captain Kirk when her character, Dr. Janice Lester, switched bodies with the Enterprise captain. Janice had a year-long romance with Kirk while they were both students at Starfleet Academy prior to her planned power grab. Janice was unable to advance within Starfleet and believed that this was due to sexism. Kirk's advancement caused her hatred toward him, resulting in the relationship's demise. Years later, she tricked Kirk into falling into a sophisticated trap in order to take his body and eventually become captain of the Starfleet flagship. Dr. Carol Marcus in The Wrath of Khan, Kirk and Carol Marcus watch. The youthful James T. Kirk was in a relationship with Dr. Carol Marcus before taking command of the USS Enterprise. Kirk and Carol will be seen together throughout Season 2 of Star Trek, Strange New Worlds, allowing an opportunity to learn more about the young couple and their ultimate split. Because he was a Starfleet officer and she was a diligent scientist, Kirk and Carol's occupations were incompatible with a long-term and serious relationship. Marcus might be the blonde lab technician referred to Kirk by his old buddy Gary Mitchell, as Kirk almost married this technician. Kirk and Carol were equally solemn since they shared a kid, David Marcus. Kirk decided not to be a part of David's life, something he subsequently regretted when he saw Carol again in Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Tragically, David was slain on the Genesis planet, and the sadness of that loss appeared to be too severe for Kirk and Carol to ever be romantically reunited. Dr. Janet Wallace in Star Trek, Dr. Wallace looks after Kirk. Kirk was reunited with another female scientist with whom he'd had a brief sexual involvement in the deadly years. Again, job conflicts produced a schism between Kirk and Janet, resulting in their split. Dr. Janet Wallace, now a married lady residing on Aldebaran 3, was helpful in healing Kirk and the crew of the Enterprise of a dangerous illness that caused accelerated aging. To make matters worse, the Enterprise was also attempting to flee the Romulans when the crew became ill. Thus, the Enterprise only survived the confrontation owing to Janet. Lieutenant Ariel Shaw in Star Trek, the original series, Shaw and Kirk bid their last goodbyes. Lieutenant Ariel Shaw, another ex-lover of the Enterprise captain, was the prosecuting counsel during Kirk's Star Trek TOS court-martial. Fortunately for Kirk, Ariel was always professional during his trial. The fact that Kirk and Shaw ended their friendship as friends was undoubtedly a factor in her objectivity during the trial. Kirk had committed no crime and was being falsely accused by an old buddy, Lt. Benjamin Finney. Realizing this, Ariel agreed that the charges should be dismissed and kissed Kirk farewell before leaving the Enterprise. Lenore Caridian in The Conscience of the King, Kirk and Lenore Kirk fell in love with the unstable daughter of Shakespearean actor Anton Caridian, pseudonym of the ruthless executioner Kodos, Lenore Caridian. Lenore murdered all who could link Anton to his horrific history, refusing to accept that her father could be such a monster. Kirk's love with a serial killer actress could not survive, and he hospitalized the young woman for her crimes. However, his hesitation to confess his love for Lenore to Dr. Leonard McCoy implies that Kirk had built a stronger relationship with the actress than was apparent at first. Edith Keeler Star Trek, Strange New Worlds recently reproduced one of the finest Star Trek TOS episodes, City on the Edge of Forever, by having Lan fall in love with a man who had to die in order to preserve the future. Interestingly, the individual was a parallel universe version of Captain James T. Kirk, who would have to make a similar decision many years later. Kirk fell for the progressive Edith Keeler in City on the Edge of Forever, who personified the identical values that founded the United Federation of Planets. Regrettably, Edith was ahead of her time. Her lessons on peace, love, and understanding would have unintentionally helped the Nazis win World War II. Aside from Carol Marcus, Edith Keeler is the most significant Kirk connection in TOS due to the awful decision he was forced to make. Muramami and Paradise Syndrome. Kirk and Muramami. Because Kirk was suffering from amnesia when he began a relationship with Muramami, it's debatable if she should be included on the list of his love interests. On the other hand, the friendship between Kirk and Muramami was a major sorrow for the Enterprise captain. A pre-warp civilization considered an amnesiac Kirk to be a deity, and he fell in love and married Muramami, who got pregnant with his kid. When Kirk's godlike abilities failed to prevent an asteroid from hitting the Earth, a mother and child were tragically slain by stoning. Kirk stood by his wife's side as she lost her battle for life. Shauna in Star Trek. Kirk and Shauna are seated at a table. The much-parodied human thing we call ... love moment in the Gamesters of Triskelion stems from Kirk's relationship with Shauna. The providers pit humanoid species against one another in warfare in the episode and abduct Kirk to participate in their games. Shauna trains Kirk, whose eyes he opens to the larger globe and the human notion of love and affection. When Kirk and his crew are rescued by the Enterprise, Shauna requests to accompany them. Kirk, on the other hand, determines that she'd be better suited to learning a new way of life on Triskelion. Kirk most likely never truly loved Shauna and regarded her as a chance to leave the planet with his life. Antonia. Generations of Star Trek. Picard. Kirk had been in a 75-year romance with the invisible Antonia when he and Picard met inside the Nexus in Star Trek Generations. Kirk and Antonia lived on Kirk's uncle's Idaho farm with a dog and numerous horses in his Nexus dream. Kirk couldn't allow himself a blissful retirement when he met the real Antonia after leaving Starfleet for the first time in 2281. Kirk told Captain Jean-Luc Picard that he regretted never proposing to Antonia, but that the Nexus now permitted him to play out that desire. Love interest in Kirk's Kelvin timeline. Carol Marcus is played by Alice Eve. The sequel to Star Trek, Into Darkness in J.J. Abrams' Star Trek movie, Kirk's major love interest was the Kelvin timeline version of Carol Marcus, since they plainly had feelings for each other. However, the romance did not take off due to Kirk's death in Star Trek Into Darkness and her father's crime and cruel death. Kirk had evidently had a love affair with nurse Christine Chapel before meeting Carol, who was so upset by the separation that she proceeded to practice medicine on the most remote frontiers. Kirk also had casual sexual connections with the Cation twins and Orion Cadet Gala. Lieutenant Lan Noonien Singh. Strange New Worlds, Season 2. Kirk and Lan LT. Lan Noonien Singh was teamed with a Kirk from another reality in Star Trek, Strange New Worlds Season 2, Episode 3, Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. Kirk and Lan fell in love while traveling back in time to prevent a terrible disruption to the timeline. This version of Kirk's ignorance regarding Lan's heritage allowed her to be herself around him. Unfortunately, Kirk was slain by the Romulan time agent Sira, so they will never know if Lan could have returned her Kirk to the Prime Universe. Lan sought out Kirk upon her return to the Enterprise but was unable to share anything about her mission with his other reality counterpart. It would be intriguing to see if Lan pursues a connection with the Prime Universe Kirk once Kirk enters the orbit of the USS Enterprise later in Strange New Worlds Season 2. The Season 2 teaser has hinted at number 1 picking up on an energy between the two, implying a new Star Trek love interest for James T. Kirk. Picard and Kirk in Star Trek Generations explain why Kirk never married. Captain Kirk, with the exception of the amnesiac Kirk's marriage to Muramami in Star Trek, the original series, never married or settled down. Star Trek Generations provides an explanation for why he never married. Kirk was shocked to encounter Ensign Demora Sulu when he boarded the USS Enterprise B as an invited guest and wondered how his former helmsman had the time to raise a family. Captain Montgomery Scott said sarcastically, "If something's important, you make the time." When Kirk subsequently meets Jean-Luc Picard in the Nexus, it becomes clear that he was always too busy to settle down and establish a family. Both great Star Trek captains pondered how they could only have families in the fictional Nexus world. While that is all well and good, Kirk claimed that he only ever believed he could make a difference in Starfleet. In essence, Kirk never married since the USS Enterprise was his wife. With that insight, Kirk abandoned his ideal marriage to rescue the galaxy one more time. Thanks for watching.